Previously on Caleb Reviews.
But all I need to say is that I'm sick of seeing all these Norm of the North movies coming out of nowhere. They've got a fifth film in the works, and I only hope that after that one, the franchise will be fully dead as it should be.
1 year later. Then, the next year on Caleb Reviews. Well, you can already tell by the title that this is going to be a really fun video. Another one where I'll be dissecting more parts of a franchise that I like to call the real disgrace of animation. Yes, we are going back to Norm of the North for its second installment, Keys to the Kingdom. Now, I've made it no secret at this point that I absolutely despise the Norm of the North franchise and the vast majority of the Lionsgate animated feature film output with a burning flame blast of 100 cannon explosions. In fact, the first movie is absolutely the worst animated film it has ever been my displeasure to have ever seen in theaters. Like, it is just god-awful, as well as being one of the worst animated films that I've ever seen, period. Honestly, I hope that the one executive who was stupid enough to think that it was a good idea for this movie to go to theaters has been fired already. This movie is literally one of the worst and most asinine ideas for an animated feature, and there is almost nothing good that you could ever say about Norm of the North. The writing is completely abysmal, with the story being heavily predictable from beginning to end, like the writers didn't even try to put in even remote effort. They intentionally made it hate its audience as much as possible. The animation, oh my god, the animation, it is some of the worst that I've ever seen. It is unwatchable, and it was actually unfortunate enough that I had to wear my sleeping mask over my eyes in order to continue sitting through this travesty. And I cannot stand a single character in the movie. They are just so stupid, so obnoxious, and so annoying all around, with zero purpose to be there to begin with. They're all a complete waste of my life and a cancer to my mental health. So in all, this is a 100% torture fest of an animated film, as well as the ultimate blend of all the terrible animated movies that I've had to go through, some of which I either still have yet to review or they weren't released until years after Norm of the North, embodying every one of their worst aspects and presenting them all in this one single garbage fire. The maximum blandness and abysmal writing of Bobbleheads the movie, the unbearably unfunny comedy of the Emoji Movie, the completely horrible tone of Arctic Dogs, the quality of the character design and character animation of In Search of Santa, the awkward villain of Food Fight, which was even worse than this, the stupidly obnoxious hammered down environmental message of Jetsons the movie, the insane stupidity of Strange Magic, and the extreme annoyance of both the Walking with Dinosaurs movie and the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. You have all of these rotten ingredients and you clash them together into the ultimate form of stupidity known as Norm of the North, complete with the icing on the cake in the form of the idiot playing Norm himself, Rob Schneider. It's just two idiots clashing together to join forces, the other idiots being Splash Entertainment and Lionsgate. That's how much of a vile and pathetic excuse for a movie this is. It's just heartbreakingly disgraceful to the very medium used to make it. But we're not here to talk talk about the first Norm of the Worst, let's move on to one of its sequels, which I am glad they're all direct to DVD, though this one in particular did have a limited theatrical release, and the one that I'm gonna be getting over with is Norm of the North 2 Keys to the Kingdom, or should I say, Norm of the Worst Keys to the Wasteland. So with all that being said, what's the damage on this Norm of the Worst sequel?
Let's go!
Now let's start off with the story. So in this sequel, Norm has become the king of the Arctic, and he gets a call from Olympia to visit New York City with his new son Quinn, joined by the Lemmings. He receives the key to the city from the mayor, but then he gets accused of a bank robbery on the news. In reality, someone impersonated Norm in a costume and stole the key to the city while committing the robbery. As they try to catch the perpetrator, they meet a kung fu hare named Fong, who is the mascot of the Bank of Chinatown, but then the real Norm gets arrested and Fong and the Lemmings break him out and everyone tries to go after the money, only to find out that it was the thugs from the first movie who stole all the money and tried to frame Norm. But actually no, the real perpetrator was the mayor all along. Oh, I'm sorry, was that a spoiler for the movie? I don't care, none of these movies ever deserve my trust to keep their secrets. So then Norm catches the mayor and returns the money to its rightful place, and he and his animal pals return to the Arctic, only to discover that it's been littered with garbage, the very thing that these movies are, and that the ice is being taken away by the same company that the mayor sponsored, which then challenges the Arctic animals to a hockey game to bet on who gets to keep the ice. As if we haven't had enough of that stupid environmental message that's being drilled into our heads about save the Arctic, save the Arctic, save the Arctic, save the Arctic. It's already enough that the story makes even less sense than in the first movie, but we get it! Save the Arctic! They've been forcing out this message throughout the vast majority of the franchise, and they seem to think that it's not a tiring message still, that they have even devoted some of the sequels to presenting that message for an entire feature length of them. We know by now that Norm has to save the Arctic, so why do you insist on shoving this message down our throats? But anyways, with that message out of the way, I wasn't aware of this until after I watched the movie the first time. It was originally going to have an extra sequel, bringing the franchise's total to 5 had these stories been separate, but for some reason, with no explanation, the crew just ran out of time to the point where they weren't able to pad out the running time, stopped trying anymore, and merged the 2 sequels together to such embarrassing results. The hockey scene is just so ridiculous as well. It's like watching a hockey version of Space Jam, but way more infuriating. And I hear some of you asking what I think about the humor. Well, I'll tell you about the jokes. It is literally the worst comedy I have ever sat through in my life. Holy crap! The jokes! They're so bad! A lot of these jokes are too overly juvenile, too poorly timed, too unnecessarily dull. One of the badly timed jokes includes the Lemmings playing the violins when Norm tears up after Fong reads I love you at the end of Quinn's message. Some of the dull ones include Norm's usual cell phone gags and that Quinn speaks human joke that Norm tells Vera and Olympia about, which was not necessary because we know that all the polar bears can talk, and a lot of the juvenile jokes are gas humor that would mainly come from the Lemmings, which are also badly timed, and it's just horrible. And at one point during the movie, one of the characters says that he would go plug himself as a response to a joke that would parody Bill O'Reilly. It's not even an appropriate joke for children because he got this close to dropping the actual F-bomb in a kids and family movie. And even at that, I don't think I could call these movies kids and family films because I think people should avoid any Lionsgate animated movie at all costs. Like, were you people really that distracted by this franchise's utterly unfunny gags and utterly unintelligent stories for so long that an animation reviewer in disguise as a Napoleonic-era soldier in 2023 had to be one of those people to bring this up? Do you have no humility, Lionsgate? Do you have no shame splash? Do either of you have any idea how to make an animated feature without shoving a horrible joke in our faces? What in the holy mother of God is wrong with you?
Keep it together, man!
All right. Just let me cool down now. Okay, I can continue. But anyways, that's the thing with the story. It's just a giant mess from top to bottom. The environmental message is forced to the max, and there's nothing funny about it at all. It's just 100% broken. Alright, now that I'm done with my rant on the story, it's time that I do my rant on the characters.
And action.
Of course, like the story, none of these characters make any sense at all. All of them are so stupid, bland, and annoying to the point where I can't tolerate being part of this world one bit. So, let's start with the characters we know from the first movie. Beginning with Norm, in this film, he has very little character development except finally becoming king of the Arctic. Stan is just a selfish idiot who cares nothing for anyone except himself. Even Vera and Olympia are almost useless in this sequel, just like they were in the first movie when they would sometimes remind Norm to save the Arctic. And then... the lemmings.
All right, little guys, you stay here and hold down the fort while I'm gone.
Where the jingle balls do I begin with those pipsqueaks? I mean, what is there to say about these pathetic excuses for comic reliefs that hasn't already been said? I know it's been almost 8 years since the first movie came out, and almost 4 years since the last one came out, and 5 years since this one came out, but I am still angry that any living, breathing human being that ever worked on these movies ever believed for a single second that these characters were a good idea. With no personality, no development, no funny moments, and no reason to even exist whatsoever, these little twits appear on screen in a desperate attempt to entertain audiences in order to give the movie the sensation that its pacing is being balanced out. Annoying doesn't even begin to describe them. Every single joke, and I can't stress this enough, every single joke that comes from these pants is a glimpse into the fiery pit. Every single time they attempt to do something that would even be remotely referred to as comedy is a slap in the face to anybody who has even cared in the smallest amount about both animation and comedy as we know them. Don't believe me? Just take a look at this.
Any clues?
Not really. Security footage just shows a shadowy figure.
Oh man, we're never gonna solve this.
I hate this freaking timeline. I just hate it so much. You think your dumb cartoon slapstick and stupid toilet humor are humorous by a small amount? This could be the stupidest excuse for comedy I have ever consumed in any piece of media. I hate you!
Yeah, lock it down, soldier!
Okay, alright. Taking a deep breath again. Now, Going on to the new additions to this movie, Norm's new triplet cubs aren't all that interesting. To a lesser extent, Quinn, who is one of his sons in the sequels, Chase and Maria don't serve much to the plot except to meddle with Norm's phone back at the North and help out with the hockey game. Fong is just a Scrooge McDuck wannabe and a racist Asian stereotype. And how in the almighty frog does Olympia know this anthropomorphic hair mascot? Not only is he racist to Chinese people, especially in this day and age, but he's also one of the most pointless additions to the franchise because he didn't even appear in the first film. So why would Olympia suddenly know this guy the moment he first appears on screen? And then with the antagonists, the mayor in the first half of the movie is just a terrible twist villain and a devious hypocrite, and the prime minister and his cronies in the second half are all stupid Russian stereotypes who also want to enforce the environmental message instead of being actual characters to oppose Norm and his friends in the hockey match. I can't believe this is still happening these days, but this movie has actual stereotypes that don't represent their cultures properly. You seriously want me to believe that there are no stereotypes in this movie and that these stereotypes were never wrong? No! Not effing possible! That's like saying we're wrong about the indigenous stereotypes in Walt Disney's Peter Pan being racist and outdated. It amazes me how this ended up getting made in the first place. Oh my god. So in the end, these characters have nothing new to learn. They're either pointless or stupid. They don't develop any further. There's nothing written-wise to like about any of them. Therefore, all these characters are just worthless. But enough of all that. Last but not least, let's talk about the animation. So next up, following the atrocious writing and the infuriating characters, we have the dreaded tradition that this franchise has of displaying the worst animation in cinema history. Good God, why is any member of my species still supporting these idiots in feature animation after that? And why would they? And pretty much, this is why I'm doing a vlog-style review, because where do I begin with this repulsive, ugly, cheap, dollar store direct-to-DVD animation? The character designs. Oh my god. I don't know what low IQ 3-year-old designed these characters, but that child deserves to be fired! I kid you not. Though like the rest of the animation, the character designs in Norm of the North are so bad that for the majority of the movie, I pretty much had to get this piece of shading and put it over my eyes so that I could barely see a thing. I had to not see much of the picture in order to sit through this cancer of an animation. And in here, it looks even worse. Like the PlayStation 2 engine has been downgraded to a PS1 engine. It's that bad. It's that unwatchable. I mean, like, now, take a look at this. Take a good look at the lemmings. See how more triangular their mouths are in this film? Now, there is no way in Sam Hill that anybody could tell me with a straight face that these are actually good or even acceptable character designs for an animated feature that any professional studio would ever allow to be presented on screen. Like, no! This is disgusting! This is at the bottom of the barrel! Like I said before, this looks like it was done by a toddler with an IQ of 0. And another thing to mention is that these characters look like they belong in CoComelon, which is another terrible computer animated thing for toddlers. Like, the poor designs honestly fit so perfectly in the world of CoComelon. It's terrible. I literally can't watch that. This is more than just terrible character design. This is also sad character design. But that's just the animals. With the humans, they still don't look as bad, but they still look like bad caricatures that were done by a beginner artist who doesn't have any experience yet, and the rendering is even worse on there too. Like, this entire movie has a bigger unfinished feel with nauseating colors, and even Vera and Olympia's hair looks worse and unfinished, like it was rendered for a PS1 cutscene. And the character animation isn't that much better either. Like, their movements are just so unnatural and wonky, and sometimes the lips don't even match what the characters are saying, on top of a bad use of squash and stretch. And speaking of which, oh god, the occasional cartooniness. It gets even worse when some of these characters would move in an insultingly cartoony and over-the-top fashion that makes the experience even more painful to watch. I think even the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies had a better use of cartoony animation, since they're not as unnatural, they're better rendered, and I don't mind the highly zany animation in that, since it does feel like it came right out of Clone High, although I don't trust Phil Lord and Chris Miller themselves anymore after their disastrous attempt to defend how they treated the animators on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and all their other animated features they've worked on. In the Norm of the North movies, however, it's like watching a disgusting worm, where you already know that how it looks is going to make you feel a little sick to your stomach, but when you pick it up with some tweezers and it moves in an overly squirmy manner, it becomes even more of a torture to you, and that's exactly how I feel when looking at all this sorry excuse for animation. And even with the backgrounds and effects, they look really cheap, generic, and horrendous, with water looking like gelatin, a generic Metropolis, or the dull white Arctic, and the textures, especially on the human hair, look worse with less lighting. And I don't think there's any way that you can convince me that, oh, Caleb, they want to pay homage to the classic cartoons of the Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. No, you can't be that serious. It is literally the exact insult to those cartoons that Son of the Mask is. If you watch some of the Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry cartoons of the 1940s and 1950s, they have better looking character designs, and the cartoony animation feels way more subtle and sophisticated in those shorts than you think. But here, there's no excuse for these hideous designs and unbearable animation. I know you only distributed these movies, Lionsgate, but do you and Splash Entertainment seriously have such a poor understanding of the principles of animation? That said, I'm wrapping it up. Just screw this movie. Screw everything about it. It is just so much worse than how I remember it, and it is in the top 3 of the absolute worst animated films ever made, sitting up there with Food Fight. From the abysmally constructed story that's all over the place, to its insulting bottom-of-the-barrel comedy, to the stupid and annoying characters, to the even worse animation than its predecessor, it is enough to make me lose all my brain cells and make me want to rip out my soul. I wish there was a way I could burn this movie and this whole franchise from my memory. All of this franchise needs to burn. This movie, this movie, this movie, this movie, all of it, everything. How are there people who are still taking anything this absolute freaking animation studio and this absolute freaking idiot distributors of animated films ever worked together on, or are still working together on seriously after all this? It's bad enough that Lionsgate is incapable of releasing a good animated film the same way that the Weinstein Company was after Hoodwinked, and that Splash Entertainment can't make a good movie, but to collaborate with each other in order to bring this gross, insulting, and sorry excuse for a franchise into existence is just unacceptable. If you, for the love of God, care about the medium of animation as much as I do, then please do not watch this movie, especially if you're a fan of stupid crap like In Search of Santa. And no kids should be watching this either. If you want to be a good parent for once, keep your kids away from anything related to Norm of the Worst. And my rating for this, I'm just gonna go the lowest of low. I don't have a choice. I can only give Keys to the Wasteland a 1 out of 10. No joke. This is a freaking 1 out of 10. Definitely the worst film of the franchise, and tied with Food Fight for the worst animated film that I've ever seen in my life. So, does this one get the Dirksen stamp of failure? Almost freaking absolutely! The Arctic is flooding with Caleb Dirksen's stamp of failure! This sucks so freaking bad! Oh my god. Lionsgate. You know, when the people who worked on the Emoji Movie, as terrible as that movie is, have more talent in making their own animated features than you, stop making animated movies! Leave the animation industry and never come back, you stupid hacks! Is that understood? Seriously. And the worst thing about it is, I only have the first and third movie left to review, so I hopefully wish to be done with this franchise for good. You know what? I'm done. I am just so done with this movie. I need to go. I need to watch something else right now, because if I don't have something good enough to cool me down, I am gonna freaking lose it. I just feel so unclean from what I just witnessed. Thanks for watching. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. God, just screw this movie!